welcome to OpenGov TV. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the distinct pleasure of having Shaun over here, who is the Global Director of Fraud and Security Intelligence for SAS. We're going to unfold today where there is fraud, where there is a security challenge, and where government can use AI and math to overcome that. That's what it's all about. And what COVID-19 has done is it's exaggerated that entire thing. Right? Government has been losing a lot more than it really knows, and you should get a grapple around this. So here's a question, Shaun. How can government focus on waste abuse are occurring within their sector, and how do they look for the indicators so they know what they should be looking out for?
Well, great question. And given all of your expertise and experience with government, I think you'll certainly understand that government leaders are under intense pressure to be able to roll out programs and services to citizens and businesses, but also to make sure that there's a level of integrity. So I'd suggest, though, that that's always been the case for government leaders. But what's changed recently? I would suggest that three things have changed, and I would call them the three V's. The first is the volume of transactions and potentially fraudulent transactions that come at government. Volume has increased significantly because of digitization. The second is the velocity. It's the speed at which those transactions come. They're coming at literally light speed because of the digitization of services that governments have rolled out, especially because of the pandemic. I'd finally say that the third V is vector. Vector means where are the threats coming from? And government leaders now are facing a really daunting challenge of understanding that there are state actors who are attacking governments and programs. There are non-state actors. There are organized crime rings. This is simply not mistakes and errors that are made on the part of citizens or businesses, although those still do exist. What I would suggest is that the vector has changed. So where the source of those threats. Now, given that, what are some of the indicators? There's a lot of indicators. You could have an increase, a sudden increase or an unexpected increase in spending in a given program area. You might see signals on social media where people are sharing that there's a way to cheat the system. There's a way to get money when you shouldn't be able to get money. And you can also look at reports from auditors general and other watchdog organizations in government. They often are a great barometer of knowing when there are challenges that government leaders may face when it comes to integrity.
Oh, fair enough. And if I can add to that, I think there's a fourth V called variety, right? Because there's so much more of it. But tell me something. Is this because there's an inherent problem with the system within governments? And I'm not talking about a government or all governments, because it hasn't been, it's not new, right? It's been around. But they've got to keep this thing going and ensure that citizen services are at paramount place. So how?
Yeah, great question. And I think the tension that you described there is certainly palpable for government leaders. On one hand, you've got this demand for services to get them out quickly to citizens because in the digital economy, citizens have learned, I want my things now. I want my service now. I don't want to have to wait. And private sector and government have satisfied that demand. But at the same time, there is this public demand, rightfully so, to make sure that when people administer those types of government programs, that they're done fairly, efficiently, and with the highest level of integrity. So in terms of what I would suggest, that tension matters a lot. Things haven't changed in some ways, but they've just gotten faster. They've gotten certainly much more variety, as you mentioned, and the vectors are significantly different.
Okay, fair enough. And what happened in the pandemic was we were all locked up at home, right? We all had to use digital transactions, right?
Yeah.
Government were trying to plug in APIs left, right, and center to make themselves more relevant. Now, have these bad actors exploited this? Any stats that you can turn around and tell me on this?
Yes, what I would suggest is that the pandemic hasn't caused this increase in fraud, but it's given an opportunity to the fraudsters to take advantage of it. So it's accelerated it is what I would suggest rather than causing it. So yes, the bad actors have certainly understood that there is significant digitization in government, and they've taken advantage of that because frankly, some governments have not thought through the level of controls that they should have. And frankly, in their defense, they've done so because they were asked under rapid conditions to be able to roll out those types of goods and services to their clientele and to their citizenry. So it's certainly something where you see significant changes on the part of the bad actors, but it's really not that big of an issue.
So, do you not think it's time for most government, if not all governments, to start focusing towards what's called their fraud management strategy? Because this has to be completely embedded in their strategy. Otherwise, it can't be an ad hoc run on this, right?
Absolutely. So countries that have done well with integrity are ones that have put forethought into it. They've actually put integrity by design. It doesn't simply happen by chance or by accident. And when government leaders roll out new programs or they evaluate the way that their current programs are administered, they need to make sure that they keep integrity in mind and at the heart of it all. What does integrity do? It builds trust among citizenry, and it helps to make sure that the citizenry and businesses trust government and recognize that it is a force for good in society.
Right. So, from a SAS's perspective, because you guys are helping lots of governments all over the world, right? And there are federal level governments and the state level governments, and they all deal with some sort of financial transaction, right? What would be your advice to a government on their fraud management strategy?
What I would suggest is that even though I painted a bit of a dire picture, frankly, from the government leaders' perspective, government leaders have a secret weapon. There's kind of the kryptonite of the fraudsters, which is data and analytics. Government leaders should roll out very thoughtfully data and analytics programs to help implement controls into their accounting systems, into their disbursement systems, and do so in real time. So you want to be able to catch up with the volume. So use digitization to attract and to cover the volume aspects. Certainly the speed or the velocity aspects as well. That's precisely what analytics do. There's no longer this trade-off between speed and accuracy. You can do real-time fraud detection in sub-seconds. And then finally, you can also use analytics on the vector side to be able to use artificial intelligence or machine learning to look for patterns that government leaders may have never thought existed or did not know were happening. So you can use them to detect emerging threats and signals of those threats just as much. So again, I think that the heart of the response that government leaders should have is to adopt data and analytics in real time to be able to enforce integrity and to promote integrity throughout society.
No, I like that actually, because you know what? It's not government that needs to do all the hard work. It's the technology in this case that does the hard work. Government has to make the data available, right? And get the experts in from your side.
Absolutely. I would also suggest that this is not a suggestion that we create robots in government. What we want to do is get the right kind of information, not just raw data, but get intelligence and information to the government decision makers at the right time so that you can have a better decision that is made by a well-informed human being about the risks of a given transaction. Now, sometimes given the volume, you may have to automate some of that, but this is not about replacing government employees. This is about giving them another tool in their tool belt to be able to make smart decisions to help serve citizens and businesses.
Absolutely. So let's take this one step further. Yeah, post 9/11, our entire experience at airports changed, and that has never gone away, right?
Yes.
The case of security got beefed up quite heavily, and it was problems left, right, and center with everything we're doing, and it's here. What do you think COVID-19's impact is going to be on our border and border protection?
It's going to be very significant. And I think that borders is just one of the many areas that we're seeing governments start to invest in. The pandemic, I think the response of governments to the pandemic has been to say, oh my, I have to step up my game to be able to control my borders. I want to know who's coming in and out of my country. I want to know what goods and services are coming into and out of the country. And what governments are doing around the world is starting to invest very heavily in trying to use analytics and data to assess the risk that you may face from either customs or immigration. From a customs perspective, you're looking at financial fraud. You're looking at trying to make sure that government is collecting the appropriate customs duties so they can use that revenue to be able to invest in further development of a particular country. On the immigration side, you want to know the risks. If I'm going to allow somebody into my country, what are the health risks that may be associated with that? What are the visa overstay risks? What are the risks of terrorism or having contraband? There's lots of different risks that government face. I would suggest that here in ASEAN, in the Southeast Asian area, there is a government that is right now under a major transformation program that is looking at all of the ways that it does immigration and customs. And it is using and adopting analytics in real time to assess those very types of risks. We also see countries like Canada Canada has just rolled out an almost $1 billion transformation program around its immigration system. So governments, there certainly is a very big trend that we're seeing in the market where government leaders, especially in borders, are investing in analytics coming out of the pandemic.
I cannot agree with you more. And you're absolutely right. I like your line which says, okay, fraud management by design for all governments in the region, because that's what we should be focusing. Shaun, thank you for your time. Really appreciate that.
Great. Thank you, Mohit. Thanks for being with me.
Yes. Thank you for that.